Hello everybody, my name is Elsie Vendetta, and I am here today bringing you the first in a series of build guides for Baldur's Gate 3, an upcoming RPG releasing August 3rd of this year. Baldur's Gate 3 is being developed by Larian Studios, the creators of Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2. Both games received nothing but praise from gamers and critics alike, and the latter is my favorite game I've ever played, so I'm hoping that Baldur's Gate 3 will be a massive hit as well. Baldur's Gate 3 will be using the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rule system, and as such there are a lot of rules that newcomers to the game will have to learn, which could make creating a build rather difficult. However, I have played and studied D&D 5e extensively and have a good grasp on how to create powerful characters. As of the making of this video, the game is still in its early access period, and as such, some things might change upon release. Hopefully nothing too big as to change this build in a significant way, but if big changes do come, I will make an updated build guide. With that out of the way, let's get started. This build brings together the Gloomstalker Ranger with any rogue subclass. This build will revolve around picking one key target in combat and basically saying, this guy is gonna die. For our ability scores, we will want to max out our dexterity, so put as many points as you can into that. It should be a 15 before we apply any racial bonuses. If we want to min-max our character all the way, then we will put 15s in our Constitution and Wisdom scores. This leaves us with an 8 in Strength, Intelligence, and Charisma. If you want to round out your scores better, then you can take Constitution and or Wisdom to 14 and increase Intelligence and or Charisma to 10 or 12. Sacrificing Constitution will slightly lower our HP and make it slightly more likely that we fail any concentration checks, and reducing Wisdom slightly lowers our spell save DC. But that is a choice you will have to make. Next, let's look at the best races to pick for this class. The top races for this class are going to be any of the elf races, including drowned half-elves, followed by halflings. Elves get the Keen Senses feature, which gives them proficiency in perception checks. This is a skill you will already want anyway, as this build will naturally be good at exploring and scouting, and especially detecting dangerous traps. This then allows you to choose another skill from your class or background to be proficient in instead. Elves also get extra weapon proficiencies, but since Rangers already get proficiency in all weapons, this doesn't end up being useful to us. Elves also get dark vision up to 12 meters, which allows them to see in dim light as if it was bright light, and darkness as if it was dim light. This is very useful as now our character won't have disadvantage on ranged attack rolls against targets in darkness. Lastly, elves get the Fey Ancestry feature, which gives them advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic cannot put them to sleep. Moving on to their sub-races, high elves get an extra cantrip from the wizard spell list, and this cantrip uses intelligence for its spellcasting ability. Because the cantrip will be using our intelligence rather than our wisdom, which is the main spellcasting ability from being a ranger, we would want to use a cantrip that doesn't rely on our intelligence score. Of the options presented in early access, the best cantrips to grab here would be either Mage Hand or Minor Illusion. Mage Hand allows you to grab items from range, remove them, and Minor Illusion can be used to distract enemies. The other elven subrace, Wood Elves, instead gain a higher base movement speed of 10.5 meters, as opposed to the default of 9 meters. As well as proficiency in stealth. This is extremely useful for us, as the extra movement speed could allow us to better run away from our enemies or catch up to them, depending on whether we want to be in ranged or melee combat. The proficiency in stealth is something that we want to have anyway, so this frees up another skill proficiency for us. The Drow race gives us the same features as the base elf, but instead our dark vision has double the range, 24 meters, and we get a free cantrip in Dancing Lights, which is a concentration spell that basically makes magical torches to light up a 9-meter radius circle. The cantrip is nice, but not something that we need, as we will already have dark vision, and the superior dark vision might be useful to us, but I feel that the other elven races would be better, as we will see later that the Gloomstalker Ranger will give us an extended dark vision anyway. The half-elf subraces have the same features as their full elven counterparts, except that they don't get extra weapon proficiencies, which we didn't really care about that much anyway, as well as the extra perception proficiency, which we do kind of care about, but we could get perception from our class or background. The notable bonus here from half-elves is that they get an additional ability score improvement. It has been confirmed that the ability score increases that each race gets will not be locked upon the game's full release. This means that, even though right now a High Elf gets a +2 to Dexterity and a +1 to Intelligence, on the full release of the game, they will get a +2 and +1 that can be put into whatever scores they want. They just can't be stacked into the same score. If this is how they decide to do the ability scores for the Half-Elves, then Half-Elves will get a +2 and 2 +1s, which could be very beneficial. Onto Halflings. Halflings get Lucky, which allows them to reroll a natural 1 on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, and they must use the new roll. This means that you will basically never auto-fail any of these checks, which is incredibly useful to have. The Brave feature gives us advantage on saving throws against being frightened. It's not known how much this will come into play on the full release of the game, but frightened is not a condition you want to have, so this feature is nice, and will be very useful if frightened becomes a common condition that enemies like to use. Lightfoot Halflings get stealth proficiency, whereas Strongheart Halflings get advantage on saving throws against being poisoned, and they get resistance to poison damage. Both are very useful, although I think that Strongheart is a superior option because being poisoned sucks. It gives you disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks, and monsters that do poison damage in D&D tend to do a lot of poison damage. However, the Ranger class gives us an option to get poison resistance naturally, so Strongheart isn't a terribly superior option to being Lightfoot. When making this build, we want to start with the Ranger class first, and our first 5 levels in this build will be in Ranger. Starting Ranger gives us 10 plus Constitution modifier, maximum HP, as opposed to Rogue's measly 8 plus Constitution modifier. We will also get light armor, medium armor, shield, simple, and martial weapon proficiencies. This lets us choose any weapon we want as our main weapon, although it is advised to use a ranged weapon, and this build will focus on the ranged version of this build, although a melee focused build is playable. We will also get strength and dexterity saving throw proficiencies and 3 skill proficiencies. This is where starting Rogue would be better, as they get 4 skill proficiencies and dexterity and intelligence saving throws proficiency instead, although arguments can be made for which class has the better saving throw proficiency. Ranger will give us the favorite enemy feature, which gives us 5 different options to choose from that give us an additional skill proficiency and a secondary ability. The 5 options are Bounty Hunter, Keeper of the Veil, Mage Breaker, Ranger Knight, and Sanctified Stalker. Bounty Hunter gives us investigation proficiency and an improved ensnaring strike by giving enemies disadvantage on their saving throw against it. Keeper of the Veil gives Arcana proficiency and the protection from evil and good spell. Mage Breaker gives us Arcana proficiency and the True Strike cantrip. Ranger Knight gives us proficiency in history and heavy armor. And finally, Sanctified Stalker gives us proficiency in religion and the Sacred Flame cantrip. Of these options, Bounty Hunter is probably our best, with Keeper of the Veil being our second best. True Strike is just a bad cantrip, as it uses an entire action to give us advantage on one weapon attack, and there are just better ways of getting advantage. We will not have the strength needed to equip heavy armor, so we don't want Ranger Knight, and we will not be casting the Sacred Flame cantrip from Sanctified Stalker. It's not a bad cantrip, but our weapon attack will be far superior to the damage that cantrips provide. The Ensnaring Strike spell that we get from Bounty Hunter lets us potentially restrain a target. A restrained creature has 0 movement speed, which cannot be increased, disadvantage on attack rolls and dexterity saving throws, and attackers have advantage on attacks against them. The Protection from Evil and Good spell provides disadvantage on attacks against the target creature, as well as immunity to being charmed, frightened, or possessed by certain creature types. These creature types are Aberrations, Celestials, Elementals, Fae, Fiends, and Undead. Ensnaring Strike is probably going to be generally more useful, although when needed, Protection from Evil and Good is an excellent spell and probably better than Ensnaring Strike. We just don't know how many of these listed creatures are present in the game. It's also worth noting that Keeper of the Veil gives us a free spell, whereas with Bounty Hunter, we still have to choose Ensnaring Strike at level 2 to benefit from the feature. Basically, both of these options are viable, and you will probably be changing out which one you pick based on your needs, as it is confirmed there will be an option to respec your character in the game. Next, we will get the Natural Explorer feature from Ranger, which once again gives us one of 5 options to choose from: Beast Tamer, Urban Tracker, and Wasteland Wanderer, Cold, Fire, and Poison variants. Beast Tamer lets us cast the Find Familiar spell, an extremely useful spell without requiring a spell slot. Urban Tracker gives us stealth proficiency, and the Wasteland Wanderer features give us resistance to the damage types of their variants. All of these choices are good, although as of early access, Wasteland Wanderer Cold is probably the weakest option, as from my experience, I have not encountered much if any cold damage, but I have found a lot of poison and fire damage. With Find Familiar, you can summon a cat, crab, frog, rat, raven, or spider, each with its own abilities, and this spell probably requires a video of its own, as there's so much you can do with this single spell. Personally, I don't like to manage extra creatures, so I would probably choose Wasteland Wanderer Poison, although I would still say Beast Tamer is the best option here if we do not have another character with the Find Familiar spell. For our background, I am only going to recommend what to pick based on the skill proficiencies we gain, and really this is the least important part to making the build. We ideally want skills that use either Dexterity or Wisdom, as those will be our highest scores. Folk Hero gives us Animal Handling and Survival, Charlatan gives us Deception and Sleight of Hand, Criminal gives Deception and Stealth, Outlander gives Athletics and Survival, and Urchin gives us Sleight of Hand and Stealth. Of these options, Folk Hero and Urchin are the best depending on if you want Wisdom skills or Dexterity skills. But again, this is the least important part of the build, and really you can pick whatever you want here. The skills we can pick from Ranger are Animal Handling, Athletics, Insight, Investigation, Nature, Perception, Stealth, and Survival. We absolutely want Perception and Stealth, so grab those if you don't already have them. We get to choose 3 from the list, so our third will probably be Insight for better determining NPCs' intentions in dialogue. But so long as you have Stealth and Perception, you can really choose whatever else you want here that fits the character that you want to play. Level 1 is finally done, and every level after this will be much faster to get through. At level 2, we get to choose a fighting style, and we get Spellcasting. We get to choose from 4 different fighting styles: Archery, Defense, Dueling, or 2-weapon fighting. Archery gives us an additional +2 to ranged weapon attack rolls, which equates to about a 10% increased chance to hit against most enemies. Defense gives us an additional +1 to AC while we are wearing armor, which reduces an enemy's chance to hit us by about 5%. Dueling gives us a +2 to damage rolls when we are using a melee weapon in one hand and not holding another weapon in our offhand. Useful if we want to use a shield and still do damage, but we will not be using a shield or a melee weapon in this build. And 2-weapon fighting lets us add our ability modifier to our offhand attack when we attack with 2 weapons, which we normally only get to add our ability modifier to our main hand attack. If you are really worried about getting hit, you could choose defense, but the benefit we get from archery is just too good to pass up. We will want to hit things often and hit them hard, and the +2 bonus to attack rolls will help us counteract a feat that we may end up taking later. Dueling and 2-weapon fighting should only be taken if you plan on doing a melee variant of this build. For spellcasting, there are tons of useful spells here to pick from. Since most of our damage is going to come from weapon attacks, we don't really care about damaging spells and instead want to focus on utility and battlefield control. It is worth noting that, upon full release of the game, more spells might be added. If any must-have spells appear, I will put them in the description of the video. If we grabbed a Bounty Hunter from our favorite enemy feature, we need to grab Ensnaring Strike. Otherwise, there is no point in having Bounty Hunter. Even without Bounty Hunter, Ensnaring Strike is still a great option. Hunter's Mark is going to be our main concentration spell, so we take it here. Hunter's Mark allows us to deal an additional 1d6 damage to a creature when we hit it with a weapon attack. We will be doing multiple attacks each turn later in this build, so this extra damage starts to stack really fast. Cure Wounds is not advised, as it takes an entire action to cast and only works in melee. But if you have no one else with healing, you could take the spell. Otherwise, I would take Speak with Animals if no one else in your party has the spell. This is incredibly useful and fun, as it allows you to engage in dialogue with any animal you find in the world. At 3rd level, we get to learn one additional spell, so pick your favorite here, or pick a spell I mentioned previously. We also get our Ranger subclass, which is where the fun begins as we will be taking Gloomstalker Ranger. Gloomstalker Ranger is not available in early access, so I will be reading the features straight from the Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. It is likely that some of these features will be changed slightly, and if major changes appear, I'll make a new video. First, we get a free spell in Disguise Self, which can be useful in social situations. Although I have yet to use this spell in game, so I cannot attest to how useful it will be, although in the Dungeons & Dragons TTRPG, this is often a popular spell for players to pick. We also get the Dread Ambusher feature, which gives us two benefits. The first is that we can add both our Dexterity and our Wisdom modifier to initiative rolls, not just Dexterity. This makes us more likely to go earlier in the initiative order, which is what this build revolves around. We want to go first. The second benefit is that, during the first round of each combat, our walking speed increases by 10 feet. Baldur's Gate uses meters, so most likely you will see this as a 3-meter increase in game, until the end of that turn. Also, if we take the attack action during that turn, we can make an additional attack as part of that action, and if that extra attack hits, we deal an additional 1d8 damage. This is why we want to go first. We want to take out a key target as fast as we can right when combat starts, so that they are no longer a threat to our party. The last feature we get at level 3 is Umbral Sight, which gives us dark vision to a range of 60 feet, most likely will read 12 meters in game. However, if we already have dark vision, then the range of our dark vision instead increases by 30 feet, 6 meters. Also, while we are in darkness, we are invisible to any creature that would rely on dark vision to see us. The second part of this feature is incredible, as so many monsters and even humanoid races have dark vision. At level 4, we get an ability score improvement or feat. If we use an ability score improvement, then we want to put points into Dexterity, Wisdom, and Constitution. Do Dexterity first, and make sure that when you do, your scores are in even intervals. The modifiers for ability scores only increase at even levels, so there is no advantage to having a 19 versus an 18 Dexterity. However, if you want to do the most damage per round possible, then we will want to instead take a feat. The feats we want to take here are currently not in early access, but upon release of the game they should be available, as all the feats from the Player's Handbook are expected to appear in-game. Again, if anything changes, I will update the guide. The first feat we want to take, and the feat we will take here, is going to be Sharpshooter. As described in the Player's Handbook, this feat removes disadvantage with long-range attacks, letting us attack from ridiculously long ranges. Our ranged attacks ignore half and 3/4 cover. I'm not sure if cover will appear in-game, but if it does, then this is a nice bonus to have. But the main bonus is this third one. Before you make an attack with a ranged weapon that you are proficient with, you can choose to take a -5 penalty to the attack roll. If the attack hits, you add +10 to the attack's damage. This feature is insane. Unless the enemy has a crazy high armor class, we almost always want to use this feature, especially if we have advantage on our attack roll. We will also want to look for as many ways to counteract the -5 to hit penalty as possible. We took Archery earlier, so we have an effective -3 penalty right now, and we will want to find magic weapons with bonuses to hit. This ability has no use limit, and can be used on every single attack. Right now we make 2 attacks on round 1, so if both attacks hit, assuming we use a short bow and have Hunter's Mark applied, we will be doing 4d6 plus 1d8 plus 26 damage to a creature. That is an average of 44 damage at level 4. Most enemies in Act 1 will die from that, and you will most likely be able to split that damage between 2 targets. It cannot be overstated how good this ability is. We also get another spell at this level, pick your favorite here. At level 5, we get an extra attack and second level spell slots. When we level up, we get the option to trade out one spell we know for another spell of a level we can cast. Most likely, you will have one spell that you don't really use at this level, so you will get one additional spell from the level up and probably trade one out. For the second level spells here, our 2 best options are going to be Pass Without Trace and Spike Growth. If you have Shadowheart in your party, then you don't need Pass Without Trace, as she already has access to this spell. But if you don't have it yet, then take it here. Spike Growth, however, creates thorny bushes in a 6-meter radius. Whenever a creature moves 1.5 meters in the growth, they take 4d6 piercing damage, and the growth is difficult terrain. This is a great spell to cast, especially in the center of a group of melee enemies that have to move up to you to hit you. This is a concentration spell though, so you can't have this spell and Hunter's Mark active at the same time. Lesser Restoration is also a good spell to take to help cure conditions like poisoned. We also get Extra Attack. Extra Attack says that we can attack twice instead of once whenever we take the attack action on our turn. This stacks with our Dread Ambusher feature, letting us do 3 attacks during the first round of combat. So during the first round, at level 5, we do 6d6 plus 1d8 plus 39 damage for an average of 64 damage on round 1 at level 5. At level 6, we will finally be taking our rogue levels, and we will be taking rogue levels for the rest of the game. When multiclassing into a class, you gain all of that class's features, with a few exceptions, but only some of their proficiencies. When multiclassing into rogue, we get light armor proficiency, which we already get, and 1 skill proficiency from the following list: Acrobatics, Athletics, Deception, Insight, Intimidation, Investigation, Perception, Performance, Persuasion, Sleight of Hand, or Stealth. If you don't yet have Sleight of Hand, I would pick it here, as pickpocketing is incredibly good, and you will also need this to pick locks and disarm traps. And then you also, for free, get proficiency in Thieves' Tools, which is very useful to have, as this will allow you to better pick said locks and disarm said traps. We then get the Expertise feature from Rogues, which allows us to choose 2 of our skill proficiencies, or our Thieves' Tools proficiency, and double our proficiency bonus in that skill. My top 4 picks here would be Perception, Stealth, Sleight of Hand, or Thieves' Tools. With the plus 3 Dexterity bonus at level 6, we would have a plus 9 to Stealth or Sleight of Hand checks if we get Expertise in those skills. Finally, we get the feature we wanted from this class, Sneak Attack. With Sneak Attack, we can add an additional 1d6 damage with a weapon attack, so long as we meet the following requirements. We are using a ranged or finesse weapon. We have an advantage on the attack roll, or an ally is within 1.5 meters of our target, and we don't have disadvantage on the attack roll. We can do this extra damage once per turn. This might not seem very good, but the damage from Sneak Attack increases as we take more rogue levels. At level 7, we take our second rogue level, giving us Cunning Action. Cunning Action allows us to take the dash or disengage actions as bonus actions. This is very nice, as it will allow us to run away from our enemies, get into range easier, and still be able to make our attack on that first round of combat where we hit stinkers. Also, this does not remove our ability to use these as regular actions, so we can dash twice in a turn, dash and disengage in a turn as well, if you wanted to. At level 8, we are Rogue level 3, which at this level our sneak attack damage increases, doing 2d6 damage instead of 1d6. We also get to choose our subclass at this level. In early access, we have access to the Arcane Trickster or the Thief subclasses, and as far as I am aware, we will get the Assassin subclass as well upon full release of the game. Any one of these subclasses will work well for your build. However, if you want to maximize your damage output, then you will want to grab the Assassin subclass. Since this subclass is not yet available in early access, I will be reading its features from the player's handbook, and as such, these features might change, although not too drastically. The Assassin subclass gives us bonus proficiencies in the Disguise Kit and the Poisoner's Kit. I have no idea if this will be useful in-game or if it will even make it into the game. However, the main feature we care about here is Assassinate. Assassinate says, you have advantage on attack rolls against any creature that hasn't taken a turn yet in combat. In addition, any hit you score against a creature that is surprised is a critical hit. Automatic critical hits against surprised creatures. Critical hits double all dice that we roll for damage, so our weapon damage is rolled twice, our Hunter's Mark damage is rolled twice, our sneak attack is rolled twice, and our Dread Ambusher damage is rolled twice. This ability here is what will make our character an insane damage dealer. And because we get advantage against creatures who haven't taken a turn yet in combat, which will be every single surprise creature. We will automatically get sneak attack applied. At level 8, if we get surprise and all of our attacks hit, we will be doing 16d6 plus 2d8 plus 39 damage, which averages to 104 damage on round 1. Your enemies will be praying to the Absolute to not die, but the Absolute will not hear them as they will be dead before then. At level 9, we are Ranger 5 and Rogue 4, which gives us an ability score improvement or feat. Since this will be the last ability score increase we will be getting, since we only get one at every 4 levels in one class, I think it would be smart to bump our dexterity score by 1 to 18 so that we have a slightly higher to hit bonus and slightly higher damage. All of the extra damage will only really be noticed if we somehow aren't able to apply any of our other damage increases. The other score we will want to put into either Constitution or Wisdom to bring those to an even number, as one of them is probably still odd. This either increases our health a little bit or our spell save DC a little bit, both of which are good. At level 10, we are a Ranger 5, Rogue 5, and we get an increase to our sneak attack damage for 3d6 and Uncanny Dodge. This allows us to use our reaction to halve the damage we take from an attack. There is no use limit to this other than we only get it once per round and is very useful. This ability makes our character very tanky against creatures that make only 1 or 2 big attacks, and is less useful against a horde of smaller creatures all making attacks against us. Still, great to have and will save you from using too many healing potions. At level 11, we get our 6th rogue level, and we get expertise in 2 more skills. I would choose whichever 2 you didn't pick from the list I gave earlier, but at this point you are probably so powerful that whatever choice you pick here doesn't really matter. Finally, at level 12, we reach the end of our character build. At level 12, we are a Ranger 5, Rogue 7. We get an increase to our sneak attack damage for a grand total of 46, and we get evasion, which reads, when you are subjected to an effect that allows you to make a dexterity saving throw to only take half damage, you instead take no damage if you succeed on the saving throw, and only half damage if you fail. This is a very strong ability, because effects that require dexterity saving throws are usually effects that you want to avoid. And, unlike Canny Dodge, this is automatically applied to every dexterity saving throw we make, no action or reaction required. It is a shame that we get this ability so late into the game, but we do need our Gloomstalker Ranger levels first if we want to maximize our damage output throughout the course of this game. So, at level 12, during our surprise round, we will be doing 20d6 plus 2d8 plus 42 damage, averaging to 121 damage. This is not as big of an increase as our levels 5 to 8 jump, but that was also our biggest damage spike. At this point in the game, you will also probably have tons of magic items that will increase your damage further, so this is probably on the low end of damage. There is obviously more than one way to make this character and have it work. The build I showcased was a build that maximizes damage while still having some utility. If you wanted to increase your damage further, you could forego increasing your dexterity score at all, and instead grab the Crossbow Expert feat at level 9. This would allow us to weaponize our bonus action with more than just Hunter's Mark. This feat lets us make a bonus action attack with a hand crossbow in our offhand if we take the attack action on our turn. This doesn't increase our damage on round 1 of combat, as we need our bonus action to cast Hunter's Mark, but it will increase our damage during subsequent rounds, because then we would have 3 attacks on every turn of combat, not just the first. You could also grab the Arcane Trickster subclass at Rogue level 3. This variation will reduce our damage by a somewhat sizable margin, because we will no longer auto-crit attacks during our surprise round. But Arcane Tricksters offer a lot of utility with the additional spells that you will get. You can also make a melee version of this build with dual weapons. You would grab 2-weapon fighting at Ranger level 2 instead of Archery, and you won't need to grab the Sharpshooter feat at Ranger 4. You could instead grab the Dual Wielder feat, which increases our AC by 1 when we dual wield, and we can dual wield weapons that aren't light but not heavy. With this build, you can make a strength-based character instead of dexterity. You would want to grab a Ranger Knight at character creation so that you can equip heavy armor, and you will want to invest in strength to equip the best heavy armor you can find. We still need to use a finesse weapon to apply sneak attack, so your best bet would be to dual wield rapiers. This build won't deal more damage than the range variation because there isn't a dual wield equivalent feat to a sharpshooter. So, this is the end of the build guide. I hope you all enjoy. This is the first video of this kind that I have made. I hope everything makes sense, and I am excited to do more of these in the future. I will see you guys next time. Make sure to like and subscribe. Alright, and I'm just going to show you visually just like this step-by-step process for just making the character at level 1. So we're going to start with the race here, and we're going to do the elf. We're going to go wood elf here. As of right now, I think the wood elf is the best option, the best race for this build. I'm not going to customize the appearance because, you know, you can do that whenever you want. Class, I'm going to pick Ranger. And then I think I'm going to grab Bounty Hunter here. And then I am going to get the Wasteland Wanderer Poison. Over to skills. We have Insight, Investigation, Perception, and Stealth already. For the skills that we can get, I think this is fine. I don't have Sleight of Hand proficiency, so if we go to Origin here, Charlatan has Sleight of Hand. I think we can just take Charlatan here. We get Deception as well, which doesn't really matter that much. It's nice, but we're not going to be necessarily good at it, so I really want Sleight of Hand proficiency because Sleight of Hand is really good in this game, so especially for pickpocketing. And for picking locks. So go back to skills, nature, survival, animal handling. I'm going to switch animal handling to insight because we can get a spell that allows us to talk to animals. Not that animal handling isn't still good. And for abilities, I'm going to just dump our strength, dump our charisma, and pump these up as high as possible. The reason why we have the 17, 16, 15 here is because if you drop down... Oh, no, it doesn't show that. Okay. So, never mind. This does not show you the bonus you get from race. Actually, it does right here. If you hover over dexterity, it shows we have a 15 base, and then we have +2 from race. Right here. And then wisdom, we have 15 base and +1 from race, and then Constitution, we don't get a racial bonus, so it's just a 15. So this would be the sort of min-max version of the character. If you want to round out your build some more, you could drop those points in Wisdom down to a 14. That's probably what I would do. I'd probably drop Wisdom as opposed to dropping Constitution, and then bump up Intelligence and Charisma. We don't need strength. We can grab a character that has strength, so it doesn't really matter that much. Or you could just drop one. You could just drop Wisdom to 15, then increase one of these stats to 10. And then later on, when you get your ability score improvement, you could do Dexterity or Wisdom, or Dexterity or Constitution, whichever one you want. But I think this is the best way to do it, because then when you get your one ability score improvement that we're going to get for this build, you will have 18 Dexterity, 16 Constitution, and 16 Wisdom, which are the stats that we care about. So yeah, there's the character made.